Okay, so we'll just finish off this detail with the stud profile you can see there, which is actually our bottom plate, but we're just going to use the same profile for all of those that are, well, they're all the same profile, which is the stud profile, even though technically that is still importantly called the bottom plate. And you can see there that the stud in elevation is just going to be shown with those circles. And so then we've got the skirting duct we need to add, and also the plasterboard that we've added either side. So you can see all the sizes over here in that, that detail. And we're going to keep it 13 mil, so make sure you've got that, yeah, 13 mil, yeah, offset either side. And so that gives us the total dimension of 102 mil. And so then you can see maybe why 100 mil wall is often considered standard. And yes, that's a great thing if you get that measurement. And now I might just offset to bring that floor line up and get a slight gap, because you would always need a gap between the plasterboard and the floor. It's an important thing for expansion, and also just for ease of installation. So, and also to make it read better graphically. So you can see there, a bit difficult to see, but there is a bottom line there. And it's an arbitrary measurement. You would never take a measurement here, and the builders would probably just leave it done by eye, sitting probably on the slab, but again, there technically would be a gap there, so we'll offset maybe, I don't know, 3 mil, something like that. Could be up to 5, but again, we'll say 3. And that should give us enough for the appearance of that gap. And, sorry? And so then I'm just going to put this onto the same layer, and if you've missed the layers I've been making, that's obviously the list, but I might bring up the layer properties so you can see all the settings that I've got there. And you can see that my stud plasterboard layer is quite, well, fairly heavy, but it's not heavy enough. Because this is going to be a detail, I'm going to bring that up to 0.5. And you've always got to vary the line weight. So for details, you generally want heavier lines than in smaller scale drawings. So 1 to 50 drawings would have lighter line weights, and then 1 to 100 would have lighter again. And then my colours there, they're okay, but then I just want to check my actual stud itself. Oh yeah, it is different, so I just was worried that was the same colour. So that one there, you can see different colour for my stud, and I'm just going to bring that one up as well. So make that 0.5. That should make it nice and heavy. There we go. And then of course, just using trim and fillet, we can join those things together. So I might use fillet and check that the radius is 0, and can easily join those lines at the end, filleting the corners. And then I might use trim, and then this time I'm going to pick the 2 inside edges. Oh, is it cracked, has it? No, no, okay. Okay, I'll release it and then try again. Well, I'm going to leave a gap, so I've got a 3 mil gap. That's why I've offset that line up above. So it should be, is it working again now? Yeah. Okay, so I'll just try one last time. And that looks like it's working on the keys again. There you go. Yep. Yep. So, yep, no problem. So now I'm using trim and still selecting my cutting edges at the beginning. And if you still have problems with trim, that's usually the reason. You've got to think about the cutting edges. And you can either select them or press enter to make everything an edge. So here, I'm clicking on the things I want to trim. Oh, sorry, I should have pressed enter first, but I'll do that now. And then I click on the bits I want to trim. And you could technically even put in a gap there, or continue the line down, it's up to you. But technically, it's fine to leave that gap, because that is, again, pretty close to the way it would be built. So I'm happy to do that. And so then the next major part is the duct. But you can see there that my lines for the plasterboard aren't very long. So I thought that's a good chance to look at the stretch command, which is one that you may not have used very much. And it's a brilliant command, I use it all the time. So One of my favourite things in AutoCAD that you don't have in Revit at all. There's no equivalent command. So with stretch, the trick is to go right to left. So this tests your knowledge of AutoCAD. So if you remember that left to right gives you a regular window which selects only the things inside, and that's never going to work with stretch because the object needs to be completely inside your window. So there you can see I want to get just the tops of these lines, but I can't select the lines without selecting the whole line. But by going right to left, that's a crossing window, and that way I can select the lines. In other words, tell AutoCAD I want to stretch those lines, but only get the ends that I want to move inside my window as well. So that's why you have to go right to left to get that crossing window. If you're one of those people who's thinking ahead and thinking, well, there's going to be a time I want to go left to right and do that to select my endpoints, well, you can. You just need to type C and then enter, and that forces it to do a crossing, even if you go left to right. Yeah. So there are lots of other selection options. I won't show you them all, but just so you know, there are about 10 that you can get by typing in options on the command line there to select in different ways. That's just one of them. So, so again, you can go left to right, but the easier way when you're using stretch is just to remember right to left to get your crossing, and you'll see it's green with the dashed border. So again, I'll just repeat it. The key is that I'm selecting the objects by crossing over them, but more importantly, getting the endpoints that I want to move inside my boundary. So then after pressing enter, it'll ask you to choose a base point, and I've clicked just to the side there to do that. And then as you move the cursor, you can see it's stretching those up. Yeah. So that's a great way of extending virtually anything. Yep. So I can do this with my whole, so notice how this thing is all below the origin there. So I'll bring the whole thing up again using stretch. So with that, I'll do the bottom part now. So again, right to left, enter, click a base point, and then move the cursor in the direction you want, and it just goes like that. Yep. So great option. And this is why, you know, I keep saying that AutoCAD is a brilliant tool for detailing, because you can just knock out line work like this and you've got really good control over it. That in Revit is it's a bit slower. You just don't have that sort of control.
Can you stretch to a dimension?
Oh yes, you can stretch dimensions, anything, absolutely,
Like
yes.
If you wanted to say, oh, let's make it meter.
Yes, yes you can, absolutely, yeah, yeah. And that's the great thing in AutoCAD. There's no easy way without using associative dimensions of just typing in the numbers into your dimensions, but you can stretch your objects and the dimensions together, which is something that you can't really do in Revit.
Okay.
So that makes it easier when you're making adjustments sometimes as well, yeah. So, yeah, so then again, we've got that now roughly the length I want it, and then we can start looking at the duct. So I'll go and make a layer, and here you could make a layer for your duct, but because I don't want to think too much about having lots of different layers for these things, I'm just going to make a new generic layer, a wall metal. Now you could put duct in there, but this could be for lots of other metal components as well. We know it's made out of metal, and that's enough for now. So I'll change the colour and just make that the colour of metal, even though the duct probably would be aluminium actually. This is the colour more for steel, but again, I'm just using this for all my metal. So that'll do for now, and then the line weight. I'm going to keep it a bit lighter than my stud because we'll have a few things to see in here. So I'll leave it at 0.35 for now, and everything else, yep, on default continuous. Alright, so we've got then the duct size you can see in the detail with its 200 by 30, and so that's really the only important dimension there. So again, just drawing a rectangle, maybe off to the side for now, and I'll move it into position afterwards. So I'll type in size 30, 200, and then, yep, it's big. So these things are, yeah, let's actually, that seems like a big one. These are not that big, the ones we've got in this room. They'd be more like 150, I'd say, or maybe even less. I'm sure you've all got rulers, you can probably measure it. Yeah. Yeah. So to me it looks like 150. I'd say even maybe 130 or something. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Okay. So is it 150?
147.
147. Okay. Wow. Okay. Wow. That's not that good. Okay. Perfect. All right. So and that's a pretty decent sized duct, but we'll go with the size John said because that's what he wants. But you know, if you own things, you can use one like that. They're standard everywhere. So you can see in the drawing, it's drawn with a probably a rounded corner on all the sides, and you can see that's probably the way it's actually built. So yeah, and we don't need to put in every single bit of that duct. It's got a cap on the top and the bottom, and I've had to assemble these things when I've done project management for office fit outs. No one wants to do this work, so often the site manager is the person who ends up fiddling with these things, and it's not that fun because there are lots of little bits in these ducts. And so all I'm saying there is you don't have to draw all those little parts as long as you've got the outside dimension, and then we'll draw some of the channels inside. But I do want to get the rounded corners. So using fillet, it's a good chance to look at some of the options there. So you've got, of course, the radius option, and I'll make it fairly small, so I think about between 3 and 5. So maybe, let's say 4. I'm just guessing, and it's yep. And so then I'm going to use the polyline option. Okay, so now I can select that rectangle, which is of course a polyline, and it just fillets all 4 corners in one go. Really simple thing, but yep, nice thing to try. And then, so maybe I want to put the channels in there and have them evenly divided inside that rectangle. So I'm going to draw a line. Now that I've filleted those edges, I can't use that side now to measure, so I'm just going to draw a line through the middle, and then use divide. So that's under the draw panel there. You can of course just type divide, but it's easy to pick from there, that divide button. So it's the one with the line with the N, letter N on it, N for number. So you need to select the object to divide, and that's going to be my line, and then enter the number of segments, and that's going to be 3. So it has worked, but do you know why you can't see the points? Yeah, well, they're under the line, or they're, yeah. Kind of, yeah. I mean, that could work, but it's mostly the point style. So with divide, it uses these things called points in AutoCAD, and so you need to have your point style set to show them. So it's under utilities here, and you've got that point style option. So you can always, if you don't find that, DDP type is what you type in at the command line. So it's an old thing from, in the old days of AutoCAD you had to remember these things, but now under utilities you can go to point style and just choose any that you like the look of. It's not changing the way the point works, so it's just to change the way it shows on the screen. So now I can see my points. And then, so I'm going to go to draw a line, and you can see there it's snapping to my point. But if you don't see that, check your point style. You need to make sure node is ticked. Yep. So nodes and points in AutoCAD are the same thing. And that's basically there a really good default setting for your object snaps. So I'll leave that one up for a tick because it's good to check that. Don't leave nearest turned on. You can turn it on or off as you need it, but I generally wouldn't say leave that on permanently. But the others are always good. So endpoint, midpoint, center. Geometric center can be good, but it can also get in the way. So that's another one I'll just turn on and off as I need it. Node, quadrant, intersection, again, always on. I generally don't leave extension on. I think it gets in the way as well. Insertion can be good for blocks, but that's arbitrary, it's up to you. And then perpendicular, I think, always on. And that's one I've noticed people don't notice or don't remember to leave on, and then can't do all the things that they need to, so that's a really useful one. And that's enough. These others, again, they're useful, but they can get in the way if you leave them on all the time. And so again, as long as you've got node though, then you find you can snap to that point, and I'll just take it across to the left, and then draw another line from my node and maybe come up and type in 20. That'll do. So I can actually select those lines. Maybe just to make it easier, I'll delete the node, even though you can see if I'm going left to right, it's not that difficult to select the lines without getting the node. But you can delete the node if you want to, it doesn't matter. So there we go, I've selected the lines and I'll click copy and then just snap to bring that up to the next node, yep. So now I'll delete the other node and my original construction line. So I can see my little cable trays is what they are, I suppose. And they're a bit narrow, so I'll just, again, use stretch and go right to left just to get those points that I want. Enter, and here I can bring them across, and using the cursor I can see how far I'm moving the cursor. And you could even click there, no one's going to take your measurements to build this duct, but if you're fussy, you can type in a measurement like 5 mil to bring them over. And there we are, so we've got a block now for the duct, and also the lines and everything needed for the block, but I've still got to make it, so I'll select that with a window, type the shortcut B, enter to make my block, and we'll call this skirting duct, or just duct, sorry, maybe this should be first, duct skirt, might be enough. And then for the insertion point, click pick point, and here I'm going to zoom right into that corner point. Yeah, and so that's exactly it. So it's really important that you hover on the points, but don't click on them. So you're trying to get those little blips to come up, and that is the technical AutoCAD term for those little things. They're called blips, yep. Yep. And yeah, when you've got it tracking, so if you notice you don't get the tracking lines, you've got to check to see that you've got that, they now call it show snapping reference lines, but the old name for it is what you can see underneath it, object snap tracking. And auto snap is another name for it, or means the same thing. And so as long as you've got that on, you also need object snap to be on. So those two things both have to be on. And then the third thing, it generally works best if you have polar on instead of ortho. So those three things really. And then you should get the tracking lines. But notice how if you go over a point again, that turns the blip off. So it won't track that anymore. Yep, so if you're doing it too much, sometimes you'll take them away. So they might have all gone now, except for the center, and then I can take that away as well. But I want to bring them back, so I can just go onto these points again, and they come back. I still haven't clicked anywhere, but now when I get the points lined up to project to my base point, then I can click. So I've got everything that I want. So that's why I always remind people with blocks, think about the three things you need. The objects, you're always going to remember that. You've selected the things you want to make into a block. The name, you'll always remember that because it won't let you click OK until you give it a name. But the point is the one that people often forget. And if you forget it, it's going to be off to the side wherever your origin was, and it could be 100 metres away. So try to remember that insertion point, and it'll make your life easier when you make blocks. It's the hardest thing to fix if you need to go and adjust the block. So that's done, I'll click OK. And now when I select my object, it's converted into a block. So I could move that, but I'm going to just practice and go over inserting the block again. So going to here, I can go to insert and then find the duct now in my list of my own blocks. But notice I'm on the layer that the skirting should go onto. So that's another thing with blocks, because you can make things within a block, like the lines that you can see there, they're still blue. So even though I've changed to a different layer, they haven't changed appearance. And you might think, well then why does it really matter which layer I've inserted the block on? The problem is that it can affect the way the block behaves, and so there you can see it's on this layer, and I've turned that layer off, but it's still visible. And that's because again, the lines are on the layer that they were drawn on. But if I select that block and then look at it in properties, you'll see it is on that layer. So it can get really confusing. And so it's just good practice to try and keep the blocks on the layer that they should be on. And I'll show you some tricks if you want to be able to change the colours of things by changing the layer. When they're part of a block, you can do that. We'll look at that later. So for now, again, I've got it on the right layer. I'm going to change back to that layer as well. And I'll insert again. And so again, I'll use that method of object tracking. And now you've got to think about how this would be built. So when they're building the wall, when do you think they'll put the skirting duct on? Generally, yes. Well, often yes, they can put the skirting on after the carpet. In this case, yeah, it probably would be actually. Yeah, and it's good practice. It's a neater detail, but it can be done either way because sometimes the carpet, like you can see here, the carpet has obviously been put in after the skirting, and that's common as well. So it can be either way. But yeah, in general, if you can put the skirting, the whole point of it is that it's meant to cover up those joints. That's the general purpose of skirting. So if you can get it to go above your carpet, that's good. But also just leave a gap. So there, we can even snap to this point and leave a gap for now, and you can bring that up and down as you need to. You can see there that John's got the carpet. He hasn't really made it clear, but we'll see if we can get some other details and look at how the carpet can be done. And the underlay as well needs to be drawn as well, with the carpet. Otherwise though, yeah, so you can adjust the position of the duct, but for now, that's good enough. And then mirror. So selecting the duct, you can just click the mirror button and then use the midpoint of your stud or something like that. That's fairly straightforward. And then for the, I shouldn't have the names of these things, but I always forget, the circles that you have that show the stud. You can just draw circles, and there is a name for them. Yeah. But all those different parts that you wouldn't believe that there is a name, and there's a reason for those things, and I've just totally forgotten. So now we need another layer. So we've got a layer for the, and this is really good because you've got the stud layer, and I might actually go and call that wall stud metal, just so that it's clear what it is. And then we need another layer because this is the wall stud metal. Well, what do you think is going to come next? In this layer name. So I'm going to add something now to this layer name to make it clearer what this is. No, so that's the next thing I'm going to do. So, but this is for the layer that I've already done. So the layer that stud that we can see, what's happening with that stud? How are we seeing it in section? It's been cut. That's exactly it. So that's what's going there. Right, so sometimes it's just the obvious thing. So that stud is obviously with a heavy line to show it's been cut. And so now we need to have a layer for the parts of the stud or the framing that isn't being cut. So a wall stud metal. I probably don't need the metal, but it's just to make it clear what the material is. And then projection. Or sometimes people put just E for elevation, but I like to put projection because then you can use it for your plans and other drawings where you're going to have projection lines. Right, so we can potentially see every element either being cut or in projection. And so then it's always going to have a lighter line weight. Oh, so it's not going to be dashed. I don't know why that went dashed. No, so they shouldn't be. No, I think I was just doing that as an example to show people other things. No, there's no dashed yet. So, so I should have noticed that. And then the colour, again, it's up to you, but I'm going to make it a lighter colour just so that it reads well on the screen. But the important thing is the line weight. So then, I'm just going to guess where the circle goes. I'm not really sure. So I'm going to draw a circle maybe just over the midpoint of this this stud, and then by eye. And I didn't change my current layer, did I? So I'm going to change it. Yes, the projection one, that's it, yeah. And so I just drew the size by eye, but I might adjust that after I bring this up, because that's too small. So, good thing to remember, you can always double click on things in AutoCAD now to get the quick properties, and you can change it that way. So, again, double click for that, but if you want to get the full properties, you can always select it and then right click and go to properties. I did 20mm radius. That's maybe a little bit too big, so I think maybe 17 looks about right. Yeah, that's better. I know I'm getting fussy, but that's, yeah, I think about right. So, again, this is fairly arbitrary, something like that. And
So do you want to go and look at the studs and actually figure out how high up the holes are?
no. So these are their, when they make it, they'll be, you know, they'll have those circles cut into it in the profile, and yeah, that's it. So yeah, I mean, I think there are, yeah, it is mostly for, yeah, it's productive, yeah, per cable, yeah. So I suppose there would be about that spacing, yeah. Just trying to think, in the CSR catalogue, it'll probably tell us. So you should have a copy of that. If you go to the folder here, I'm pretty sure I put one there. There we are, supply catalogue. There we are. So you can even see them there. So I don't think we're going to get a second one in there. They look like they're about 600 apart. And I haven't got enough there at the moment. So maybe though, I'll bring this one down a little bit and then copy it up 600. Yep, there we are. So that's 600. And then I can just extend the wall again using stretch. Should be fine. Yeah, that'll do. Oh, from anywhere, because, yeah, just as long as the circles are 600 apart. Yeah. And that's just a guess, though. And it's really just to get the look of it, because they're not going to make these differently because you've drawn it differently. Maybe that's even too far. So, you could bring it down more, but again, just look at these drawings. Yeah? Right, that's probably right, yeah. That's a pretty standard measurement. If you look through the catalogue, it'll give you the spacing of them, if you want to find that out. But I think that's probably enough for that that detail. And then all you've got to look at for the next one is the insulation. So if you know about the batting line type, that's sometimes a good option. But I'm going to show you how you can use splines to get maybe something that won't change with your scale. Well, yeah, I've probably gone too long, so give some time to maybe get those things done, and then we'll have a look at the insulation after.